Welcome everyone to Simply Bitcoin. We break down the news from Twitter, the daily fail, the meme review, software releases, hardware releases, the websites by plebes or plebs. Drop us a like, subscribe, and joining us today is fellow Bitcoiner and pleb, Laser Hodl. He's gonna get in on the fun in a little bit, but as you know, and if you don't, I'm telling you, we're going to the numbers. Let's do it.
Number time!
At the time of this recording, the block height is 699,820. The Bitcoin price, 46,300. Chain rewrite days, 878. Total public Lightning capacity, another all-time high, 2,416.62 BTC. Sats per dollar, 2,160. Blocks to the halvening, 140,180.
Man.
Lightning Network, I mean...
So we're almost at 2,500. I'm so excited to play our sound, Phil.
I'm so excited. I hope people like it. We've had this sound just sitting and waiting, and it's coming out.
Should I add like a very short, like a 0.5 second sneak peek? Like,
no, we can't.
I already did the sound effect. I'm a little, it's a tiny little sound.
They know what it's gonna somewhat sound like, but like it doesn't. They don't know the full effect yet. It's okay. It's coming.
Okay, it's coming. But yeah,
it's gonna be like this giant nothing burger, right? We're gonna do it, and everyone's gonna be like, "Meh."
That's it. That's it. Really, guys? Like, the question is. Yeah, all this build up for nothing. But yeah, man, look, all seriousness, look, another day consolidating, an awesome day to stack sats. You know, Bitcoin's at a discount. It's under 50K. I know that sounds crazy, but in 4 years, you're going to be very happy that you stacked some Bitcoin under 50K. You're going to wear that. You know, you're going to be able to tell your friends, I bought Bitcoin under 50K. They're not going to believe you, but you know you did it. Anyways, Phil, it's time for
the daily fail. All right, this is one of our fellow viewers responded today. So look, we're going to do a couple of fails, okay? There's going to be some DeFi, there's going to be some government nonsense, and of course, there's going to be some BSV, you know, stupidity. But we're gonna dive into this. This is just a follow up to yesterday's, right? So UgMug4, here we go. In the closing discussion of this excellent episode, at Coinicarus asks the question, yield for what? If you've been ignoring DeFi so far, here's a quick explainer. Spoiler alert. Yep, it's a Ponzi. Dude, this guy kills it in this thread. Here we go. DeFi yield, and you can see I liked all these tweets. Anyways, here we go. DeFi yield 101. Worthless governance tokens are generated for providing liquidity. That's basically it. If you have money, you can make money. Sound familiar? Let's move on. Liquidity can be provided in the form of stable coins or other shitcoins. If you're already fiat rich, you can provide safe liquidity to stable coins only decentralized exchanges and earn native yield based on the swap fees plus that juicy, worthless governance token. However, if you've been shitcoining, you'll likely need to provide that to a lending platform to borrow stable coins, since that's where the higher rates are at, where you pay a fee, which is someone else's yield, and they're probably shorting your shitcoin. The alternative to lending is to sell half your shitcoin stack for another shitcoin, usually ETH, to provide liquidity to non-stable coin dexes. This significantly increases the risk, since any price movement from the ratio where you deposited causes you to lose money. The entire system relies on people hoping that these governance tokens, which have their own problems, as we've shown on the rec leaderboards, will have enough value that they can make a profit selling them after you factor in the gas costs of doing so. So dude, shout out to you to finally being able to explain what I definitely couldn't about DeFi. Like, I could not explain it remotely as intelligently as that. I can just say it's a scam. But this is fantastic. This is going to be in the show notes so everybody can refer to it. Really great job, UgMug. Okay. So that was just a follow-up to yesterday's. Do you have any comments on it?
That's a great handle, too.
Sorry?
That's an awesome handle, too, UgMug.
Yep.
UgMug. It is a great handle.
Nico, you got anything on this, or you want me to move on?
Dude, phenomenal explanation. And again, I'm going to stick to what I was saying yesterday. DeFi should really be called CeFi. And there's just another great example of that. There's nothing decentralized about that at all. Zero.
Okay. Right? It's just like, man, he totally like he just killed it. And, you know, for the people that still want to do it, look, we're telling you so. We've told you so. Let's move on. Let's move on to another form of DeFi which doesn't work, which robs people and pretends to provide security. That's right. We're talking about governments. Okay, so Bitcoin Meme Hub, right, put this tweet out. We love Bitcoin Meme Hub. He is like the original meme god, Bitcoin meme god. Anyways, and they say Bitcoin is for money laundering. And this is not The Onion. No, it's not. So he posted this screenshot. German finance ministry raided over anti-money laundering.
That's real? No way.
Bloomberg.
It is indeed from Bloomberg, and it is real. Okay, so there you go. German finance minister raided over anti-money laundering. All right. That's right. Look at that. German prosecutors raided the federal finance and justice ministries in Berlin as part of a probe into whether officials at an anti-money laundering unit failed to handle cases correctly.
Well, I'm sure they'll clean house after that.
What's up, Laser?
Well, I'm sure they'll clean house after that.
Oh, 100%. You know, I mean, haven't they cleaned house in the past? Crickets.
Dude, I'm sorry, Phil. I'm just in awe right now because, you know, they're saying it's Bitcoin, and you know, Bitcoin is where the crime happens, and at the same time, like, not only do they raid the office of the German finance ministers, like the place that they're supposed to stop doing the money laundering, whatever, from. And Christine Lagarde is convicted, of a crime herself, the head of the European Central Bank. So it's just hypocrisy on top of hypocrisy on top of hypocrisy. They don't want to stop money laundering in Bitcoin. What they really want to do is they want to stop Bitcoin because it takes away their jobs, because it makes them obsolete. This isn't about fighting money laundering. We've covered it. We've covered the Financial Action Task Force. It's all a scam. It's a racket, right? It's to like pull money from actual working businesses that aren't compliant instead of actually fighting crime. And that's just more proof of that. It's just one giant bureaucratic shit show. Phil?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have to get through the rest of the article. All we had to do was read the title in the first paragraph, and like, that's it. That's really all it takes. I mean, all we are hearing is all of the problems with Bitcoin and how it goes around their regulatory measures and the FATFA and all these agencies that nobody elected, nobody asked for, and they're protecting us. And yet, again, we show another receipt where they can't they cannot stay out of their own way. This is ridiculous. We're being ruled by fools.
But I don't blame them. That's the thing, that the system is architected in a way where it's highly centralized power. And as we know, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So if you have a guy on top, right, that essentially could play God, right? What ends up happening? Politicians become corrupt. Why is that, right? Because they can, right? That's how the system is architected, right? Bitcoin solves a lot of this, so anyone who's against that is really against anti-corruption, at the end of the day, right? It's like, and also, I have to say something, Phil, before I get Laser Hodl's opinion, is a lot of these politicians, they're projecting what it is they're guilty of themselves, So I'm happy this happened, because this is another example, right? 7 months ago, when we first started this show, Phil, or no, it was almost a year and a month now. Like, remember I kept telling you, I feel bad. We sound like conspiracy theorists. But now it's like time and time again, two independent content creators that talk shit about Bitcoin on YouTube ended up being more right than the mainstream media. That isn't a coincidence, right? That isn't a coincidence. The mainstream media is there to protect the powers that be rather than tell you guys the truth. What do you think about all this, Laser Hodl?
Well, I do not like time thieves. They make me angry. And in the case of shitcoining, how do I even put this? So Bitcoin's literally, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that Bitcoin's literally saving the world. And at the same time, you have these time thieves that are trying to get rich instantly, trying to get ahead, and it's just I don't like it. And of course, you have governments, money laundering. Really, shitcoins and governments, they're very similar. Shitcoins tend to be these this federation of controlled nodes, pretending that it's not a monolith, right? So they're giving you the perception of this distributed, decentralized mechanism when really it's actually a monolith. It is a centralized outfit. And central banks are exactly like that as well. And so, unfortunately for shitcoins, I think they're actually competing with central banks in the business of time theft. And I don't think that's going to end well. But I view them the same. They're time thieves, and I dislike them strongly.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. And I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to central banking. And the example that I always give is when Elizabeth Warren is like these shadowy super coders. And then when, the IMF had the audacity to come up with a tweet that said private issued, crypto assets and they're opaque. It's like they're talking about themselves. Bitcoin is publicly issued. You have to actually spend electricity just like everybody else, to mine that said Bitcoin. And it's public. It's all in a public ledger. What's happening behind closed doors in central banks? No one knows. Only the people at the top, So again, this is projection 101. It's like if you want to blame your opponent, what it is you're guilty of yourself, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. But anyways, yeah. Phil, it's time for
the Daily Meme Review, sponsored by
Citadel 21. All right, everybody, the meme for today is brought to us by Hodl. Tarantula never stood a chance. The IMF, my Raspberry Pi Lightning node. Amazing meme. And the second meme is brought to us by Denver Bitcoin. I picked this one specifically for Laser Hodl. Government, us, our money. So it's literally.
So good.
I know. We're the ones watering the government, but even though the government has us, in handcuffs. Anyways, amazing memes. And for that, I'm going to give it a very, very special very special score. But Phil, why don't you rate it first, and then I'll go.
Oh, come on. You're screwing me. Okay. Loved both of those memes. And you know what? I'm super pissed that I gave a node case yesterday. But I don't care. I have zero shame. And I'm giving today, this was my first Raspberry Pi case made by Cloaks called the Energon Cube. Ooh. And that's what they're getting as a rating.
Phenomenal rating.
And for the nerds who know Transformers, they will know what Energon Cubes are.
Energon Cube. And in honor of our guest, I'm going to give it a very special score. The Black Book of Communism. If you want to know what the hell is going on today, I suggest reading this entire thing. It's crazy because history doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes, and these things have been going on for quite a long time. Laser Hodl, what would you give that meme?
Gotta give it 2 beef livers.
2 beef livers, bro.
What with that, Nico?
No, that's pretty easy. It's an image.
It's funny.
I'll pop it up. Amazing memes. The Black Book of, memes. Reviews, scores, I don't know what you call them. But anyways, Black Book of Communism, the Energon Cube, Lightning Node, and 2 beef livers. That sounds delicious. Anyways, Phil, it's time for
the Daily News, sponsored by
Cloaks.
A radical plan to crack down on social media abuse is being considered by the federal government. For more, Nine's Oliver Haig joins us live in Adelaide. Ollie, how will it work?
Lila, good morning. Essentially, it will work the same as a passport. Australians forced to submit 100 points of identification like their driver's licence or passport when using social media accounts like Facebook and Twitter. Now, police would have access to those social media accounts, and it's all part of a crackdown on online abuse. Now, users could be liable for defamation suits or even criminal prosecution, and it's all part of a plan hoping to deter people from engaging in bad behaviour. Now, the recommendations were handed down by a federal parliamentary inquiry. They're reforms that are being considered by the Morrison government, with the chairman saying there is merit to remove to remove the veil of being anonymous. Layla?
So, look, there you go, guys, right? Governments don't want you to be anonymous. They want you to identify, you know, specifically in Australia. But the reason I'm playing Australia, guys, is because Australia is just the beginning. If you think this is not coming to the West, you're absolutely kidding yourself. But stick with me, because I'm going to connect the dots with a lot of things. And then I'm going to tie in. And again, guys, I want to be very specific. We are not anti-vax on Simply Bitcoin. However, we are for the individual to make his choice over his own body. But we do believe that governments are using what's going on in the world right now in terms of the pandemic as an excuse to escalate their powers, to give themselves more powers, right? Anyways, let's move on to the next tweet, right? This is a tweet from James Melvin, right? It says, Australia is becoming completely totalitarian now. The Australian government just passed a law on surveillance that allows them to do the following: modify or delete the data of suspected offenders, collect intelligence on criminal networks, take control of a suspect's offender's online account, right? And it says anyone who refuses to comply can face up to 10 years imprisonment. So just for non-compliance, right? If you don't want to give them your ID for, you know, for your social media account or any of that stuff, you could face up to 10 years in prison. That's absolutely wild. But wait, I'm not done. It's not only in Canada. This is also happening in Australia, right? This is not also happening in Australia. It's also happening in Canada, right? Check this out. They're trying to pass Bill 36. In the current session of Parliament, the Trudeau Liberals have introduced legislation to modify the criminal code of Canada to make hate speech a crime of severity equivalent to committing an act of terror. Right. So just because of something you say, right, that could be deemed a terrorist act. Now, again, there's a reason that the First Amendment is the First Amendment. The person that gets to decide what is hate speech and what is not hate speech has complete and total power. So let's say your political opponent says something that exposes you. You could potentially label that as hate speech, and you could potentially put them in prison because of something that you didn't like them to say, right? That's why the First Amendment is structured the way it is, and that's why the First Amendment is the First Amendment, right? And not the second, not the third, it's the first, and it's there for a reason. Anyways, moving on. For some reason, central banks, right, want to get involved with fighting the pandemic, and here's something awfully suspicious, guys, and we cover this a lot on this show. Look who she's tagging: Professor Klaus Schwab. There he is again. Who is this guy? Who is this guy that says the Great Reset is the same as Build Back Better?
Joe Biden calls it Build Back Better.
Build back better.
Building back better.
To do things differently, to build back better
And build it back better.
It's my plan to build back better.
It's a big effort to, some would say, to build back better. We would say to really have a great reset.
Who is this guy? He's a non-elected guy. Why does everyone keep mentioning this guy? Very suspicious. And why is it that they want to vaccinate everyone? Right? You should be your decision whether you want to get vaccinated or not. Right? And isn't it that if you get a vaccine, you shouldn't be worried, whether someone else got it because you're vaccinated? It's almost as if they're using that as an excuse for something. And we'll get to that in a second, right? Moving on to the next tweet, right? This just came out today. And again, she had a Freudian slip, in my opinion. I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Let me play the video.
Will exposure sites be put back in place, especially with reopening and people going back to pubs and stuff? Because our exposure sites still, will they be put back in place to be listed once we are reopening? Because they're not at the moment.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the New World Order. And yes, it will be pubs and clubs.
Let me play that again, just in case.
In the New World Order. And
New World Order. And it's crazy because, the Twitter fact checkers got right on top of that very quickly, and they reacted savagely, and they said unfounded claims about the New World Order conspiracy theory. There it is again, Phil, conspiracy theory, are shared after an Australian government official used the expression during whatever. They said the phrase is commonly used to describe times of change and cultural shift. I don't know about you guys, but New World Order is very specific. Just saying. Anyways.
Not only is it specific, not only is it specific in this case, but it's also to a specific time, right? Like, there was a time when all of these conspiracy videos were talking about the New World Order, and then we shifted to the whole Build Back Better narrative and the you'll have nothing, but it's all the same.
It's all the same. And guys, and we're gonna get Laser Hodl's opinion on this. I promise you that Bitcoin is your number one weapon against fighting this stuff. And we'll get to that in a sec. Just bear with me. Anyways, moving on to the next one. Look at that. A concentration camp in Australia, right? They call it an isolation center. You know, I'm sure, you know, the Germans in the 1930s had a very nice word for their camps as well, right? In the 1930s and 1940s, right? That looks like a concentration camp, you know, and this is a concentration camp for a virus, right? That has a 99.99 survival rate up to the age of 60, right? Below that, you know, think about it. If something has a 99.9999 survival rate, why the hell are they building isolation centers? Just a question. These are just questions that you should be asking yourself. Anyways, moving on. We have an army doctor, right? And she said something very interesting. And again, we have the Pravda of Twitter saying this is misleading. You know, you have the fact checkers telling you that you did not see what you saw. Anyways, let's see what she's saying.
And this is my new thing. When I talk to people, I say, if you think we're fighting a virus, you're going to act like a victim. If you think we're fighting a war, you're going to act like a warrior. And my argument is, we're in a war. Now, we have to determine, it's a 5th generation, uncharacteristic, unrestricted war, but we have to determine who the enemy is.
So again, you have a doctor saying, we're not necessarily fighting a virus, we're fighting a war. And what have we been telling you for months now, guys? That we're not in a kinetic war right now. We're an information war. We're in a war for people's minds. There's some evil stuff going on right now. And this is all because, right, central banks don't have any more juice to squeeze out of those lemons. So, you know, the pandemic is a very convenient way, you know, to just reset everything, right? And continue their failed fiat experiment, right, of keeping everyone enslaved. Anyways, you also have, and again, what the vaccine passports, the way that I see it, guys, is a way in for ID passports, right? Movement passports, right? You have Trudeau also from Canada on vaccine passports. Trudeau says provincial passports will be an interim measure, right? So it's not temporary, these vaccine passports anymore. That will perhaps last a year or so before the federal government in Canada bring in a formalized passport version. So it looks like these things are going to last way more than a year, right? Who could have thought? Anyways, and this was today, right? Again, pushing this so hard. Why are they pushing this so hard? It does not make sense. This just happened in the US. Being an immigrant from Venezuela, I could have never have imagined this happening in this country. President Joe Biden to mandate all employers with more than 100 workers required COVID vaccinations or weekly tests. The new requirement would affect as many as 100 million Americans, right? Look, like I said, we're not anti-vax, but we are for the freedom of the individual, and this looks like an awfully convenient way of coercing people into something that they don't want to do and divide and conquer the population. Anyways, there's a lot of too many coincidences here, guys. Now, and I want to point out this tweet by Laser Hodl. I think he, hit the nail on the head. A new society in cyberspace that permanently displaces the nation state with digital identity-based, single sign-on, social scoring, omnipresent surveillance, programmable surf money, and a new and a network of digital and physical checkpoints. This is the Great Reset. Again, we've been covering for months now, guys. There's this is the future, right? The future of central bank digital currencies and the digital identities linked with that. That digital identity will also be linked with your social media account. It will be linked with everything you do, right? They don't want you to move more than a 15-mile radius. They don't want you driving a car. They don't want you eating meat, right? They don't want you doing all of this stuff. That's the choice that you have. But on the other side, you have a very hopeful choice, and that is Bitcoin, freedom money, right? This is the future we're heading. This is the future that the elites want. And the pandemic was the perfect situation for them to implement this. They fell in love with the China model, and they're currently in the process of trying to implement it in the West. And our only way to fight back is with Bitcoin. Anyways, Phil?
You know what? I'm really, you showed that picture of Justin Castro, and there was an article that you had about Canada before showing the Prime Minister. I don't know if you could pull that up again, but there was a bottom paragraph that was, to me, could be my ignorance, but that was scary as hell. And essentially talking about how an accuser, doesn't have to be known by the accused. Yeah, this is like the tribunal will have, this was for the, yeah, exactly. Okay, for that bill C-36, look at this. The tribunal will have the ability to impose $20,000 in compensation paid to the complainant by the accused, and in addition to further impose a $50,000 fine to the receiver general of Canada, for Canada. Like, really? So now the government's getting a cut? Of course, why not? It's free money, it's fake money. Anyways, the identity of the complainant can be withheld from the accused. And in some cases, the accused will not be allowed to know the specifics of the charges. There is no mechanism to appeal outlined in the bill. So one might assume that if you are accused, then you will be found guilty. Like, that's insane. So you don't know who's accusing you. You don't know what they're accusing you of. You're just guilty. Oh, and you got to pay, right? You gotta pay. It's like, I mean, that's insane stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, you showed so much more than that, right? And I wanted to say, besides that, the piece on Klaus, right? That Christine Lagarde tagged Klaus Schwab. He essentially is the face that whoever this cabal is of central bankers mixed with, whoever else, IMF and Bilderbergs and all of that garbage, okay, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat, he is essentially the face that they've chosen to appear in front of everyone, right? He is the person they've planted in front of us, right? It's just like the Wizard of Oz, right? The great and all-powerful Oz, right? And then you just have this scared old man in the background, twisting a bunch of wheels. Like, that's exactly what this is. So they just put this guy right up there, and we can all sit there and look at him and be like, he's the architect. This guy is nothing but a puppet just like them. He's just a brainwashed puppet just like them, not realizing, or maybe he does realize that they're just destroying society for a very small group of people that think they are going to prosper from owning a whole planet of slaves, which is psychotic and weird.
Amen.
Really
man.
weird. To me, it's very depraved. I don't understand how much of a crappy human you have to be for you to decide like this is what you want.
These are evil, soulless people, man. They've controlled human beings for hundreds of years through the central banking system, and our only way out as a species is with Bitcoin. But I'm gonna shut up now. I want to get Laser Hodl because he has been on top of this from day one. What's your opinion on this, bro? Are we seeing things that are not there?
No, I think you're seeing it. Most people are seeing it. In fact, I think they want to be seen. I think that's part of what's happening here. It makes it tricky, difficult for the people that want to stop this whenever they open. It's, I think, actually a brilliant strategy. Because if they were broadcasting every single thing they were doing, that makes it very difficult to sell to other folks as a conspiracy, right? If it's all out there plainly, it just makes it very hard. It really cuts at your credibility when you're trying to sell it. Look, I mean, the fact of the matter is since 2009, we've been teetering on the brink of the largest sovereign default of all time. And now we're in it. It's occurring. And the politicians, the governments of the West have known that for about a decade, that we were on the edge of this thing. And these NGOs and think tanks like the World Economic Forum, and there's hundreds of them, that all sprout out of the central banking. I think of it more of like a cartel than a cabal. It's basically about 150 some odd families that have been running the monopoly on money for about 2,000 years now. You know, you can imagine that's the longest monopoly. There's not a bunch of competition there, right? You don't see people competing to get into money printing. It's the same people, and that makes a lot of sense. And so, the act of money printing creates cycles. You have a short cycle. You know, people know about this: recessions, boom bust. We have these bailouts. Even folks on the left get outraged with that. You remember Occupy Wall Street, right? Like, why are we bailing out all this big money? So people know about short cycles, but the big cycle, Ray Dalio talks about it, or the long wave cycle, as Kondratiev, a Soviet scientist, calls it. This is. It's not enough to do bailouts. The government actually has to get in and manage it hands-on. And the reason is this is where you can have real societal collapse. This is where you could have revolutions. This is where you could have the people of these countries basically flip the table over and say no more. And so the way I look at this is over the last 10 years, governments have known they're going to need an answer when the largest sovereign debt crisis of all time hits, right? And in the past, wars seem to be a very good tool for that, right? It causes everyone to shelter in place, huddle under the state. We say we're all in this together, and that allows them to reshape society, relaunch society, reset the balance sheets of nations. And at the same time, they fire up the money printers and excavate whatever productive capital they can before the game board is restarted. Okay. And you know, that looks a lot like what we're seeing now, except, you know, to use Klaus Schwab's little shtick, the old way of resetting no longer works. We need a new normal, a new way of resetting the world monetary system. Okay. And that's exactly what COVID and this info war is. It has the same downstream effects of causing society to basically become crippled with fear, to huddle under the state. You know, there's an invisible enemy that we're all fighting. We're all in this together. And any cost to our savings and any reshaping of society is permissible because, you know, we have this shared collective responsibility, this civic duty. And when we're all done, we'll all just be grateful that, you know, we've made it through the fog of war. And so, you know, this is the new model, and it's very effective. The choice methodology of the World Economic Forum seems to flow from Malthusianism. Malthusianism is this fear that we will cross a point in terms of population that we can no longer go back, that humans will spoil nature, will spoil all the best parts of being. We're going to pollute too much. We're going to just basically exploit nature beyond repair. And from that position, a lot of these, I've been calling them Malthusian fear spells, are being crafted and relayed and basically played to society. And they all have similar shapes. Climate change, so it's this multinational problem that one country can't solve, and it's a grave danger, and we can't quite see it. Or if we all band together and wiped out previous norms and lived in a new way, we can get beyond it. COVID, it's this problem that's a multinational thing. It's a grave danger. We can't quite get our hands on it, but if we all band together and wipe out previous norms and live in a new way, then we can get beyond it. Racism, it's this big, terrifying thing that's threatening us all. It's a multi-nation thing. We can't quite touch it, but if we all band together, we can and write previous norms. We can live in a new way. And you can go on. You could say terrorism, right? You could say it's this new threat that is cross-nation, and so we need to wipe away previous norms and live in a new way, and on and on. They all have this shape, and so these are all Malthusian fear spells, and we're fighting a war not on the not against the invisible enemies of these Malthusians. It's actually a war on movement. It's a war on privacy, a war on savings. It's a war on bodily autonomy. And it's even a war on the human spirit and truth itself. So COVID, climate change, and cyber attacks, they're all agenda expedients. And so the sooner as a pleb you kind of zoom out and realize it, the sooner you realize that we are not victims of all these catastrophes that happen to be hitting mankind at the same time, right? We are actually being attacked, forced to capitulate our our natural rights, okay, in order for governments and statesmen and central bankers to scoop up those rights and subject us to a new panoptic, high-tech, politically correct form of futuristic communism.
Absolutely, man. I think you, man, my mind is blown right now, and this is exactly why we wanted to have Laser Huddle on. I feel like we've been covering the surface, Phil, but he really got into the nitty gritty of it. Now, Laser Huddle, where, because I want to end the news segment on a hopeful note. Where does Bitcoin fit into all of this? And do you agree with me when I say that, it is our single greatest tool to fight this evil?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this is the best time to be alive of all time. What's happening is bigger than all of us. We are literally at a turning point. And, I've been crunching data points and thinking this game theory through very heavily for 2+ years now, and my measured opinion is that autonomy of the individual will prevail. This terrible evil can be endured. The human spirit will soar. We will soar, and it's because we're learning from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is teaching us. It's teaching us in the way that it gives us impossible money, unstoppable money. We can take those lessons and apply it to other places in life. We can have unstoppable communications. We can have unstoppable data platforms. We can have unstoppable food. We can have unstoppable education. By learning from Bitcoin, we can allow an unstoppable, peaceful society to emerge. And in a way, all these tests, all this suffering from the Great Reset and this path to 2030 is a massive blessing, because it's only serving to force this unstoppable, peaceful society to emerge.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And, and I always say it, all these things that are happening right now are the best advertisements for Bitcoin, and I think that Bitcoin has a way, once you take that orange pill, has a way of waking you up and really seeing the world for what it is. And I agree. I'm very hopeful for the future. And I know Phil feels the same way because of Bitcoin, because we are protected by, that giant decentralized network of energy all around the world. But man, that was incredible. Anyways, Phil, there was a software release today. Why don't you tell everybody about it?
Software releases. All right. We've got Caravan version 0.3.11 that was released. It's a stateless, flexible, multi-sig coordinator that integrates with your hardware or software keys and your Bitcoin node or block explorer. Check it down below in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. All right, guys, that was our show. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to our awesome sponsors. Check out CryptoCloaks.com for the best 3D printed merch. Get yourself a Bitcoin grenade. There's a 5% off link down below in the description. And of course, check out Citadel 21 for the best Bitcoin signal. It's by plebs, for plebs. Me and Phil have written articles for them. Get yourself a physical copy. Only 1,000 are made. Citadel21.com. Before we go, I want to give a shout out to our awesome guests. Definitely go give them a follow if you want to stay on top of what's going on. Phenomenal Twitter account. You can go give them a follow at Laser Huddle. Anyways, guys, that was our show. If you enjoyed the show, you know what to do. Smash that like button. And of course, if you want to continue hearing the catastrophic fails from the Great Reset, Klaus Schwab, Christine Lagarde, all the above in the shitcoiners. Can't forget them. And the Bitcoin news from the plip-plap perspective, definitely consider subscribing, and we'll see you tomorrow, guys, for another episode of Simply Bitcoin.
To quote our guest, we don't like the time thieves.